MMA scraps is why most shows tap out then cry. We the ones like 'em now at the end of the bout with our hands to the.
Frank, I do have a question about you that I haven't heard you talk about. Maybe you have talked about it and I just missed the interview. But there's a lot of talk about James Toney lately. Can you give us your kind of thoughts about him coming into the UFC, where you think he fits in, and that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, obviously as a boxer, I think James Toney, I've always been a fan of his style. I think he's a phenomenal boxer because he's so technical. I think that, hold on a second. Hey, can you guys keep it down just a little bit? Thanks. The pitfalls of having your kids in the gym every day.
That's okay, brother.
I think James Toney is an excellent, boxer. I think he's so technical, almost to a fault, where he doesn't have to put as much time maybe in conditioning and preparation as some of the other fighters have to, that are just not as slick as he is, especially defensively and counter fighter. As far as going into the UFC, I mean, honestly, I would have liked it if maybe he would have started out a little bit younger and had a little bit more, fights maybe building up to. But right now, with him getting in, there's no easy fights for him, and I think that, especially through some of the comments he made about, in there to prove the boxing can still beat MMA, and some of the silliness and those things. I realize that, I know, because we all do it, that's just hype to get people to watch his fights. As far as what's going to end up happening, unless somehow he can find somebody who has no ground skills whatsoever that wants to fight him, I think he's going to have a hard time. Even if he fights, let's say, people that are not as proficient in ground as he is, or they're still good kickboxers. Like, I mean, everybody I've heard, a couple names I've heard thrown around was like, Czech Congo. I'm like, okay, well, you guys do know that Czech Congo throws kicks, and Tony's never been kicked before.
Right.
Like, we all know what happens when a K1 fighter fights a boxer. It's the same thing that happens, except for instead of now being taken down with a double and choked out like a jiu-jitsu guy would do it, he's just going to kick him in the leg 3 or 4 times. And if you don't have any defense for that, I couldn't imagine sitting there and taking 3 or 4 unanswered, full-blown low kicks to the thigh. That's going to be a pretty awful night.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to pass along this message from Ben Saunders, who originally we had him scheduled for this time period, but because Frank has to train, obviously, for a very important fight, we switched him around. He said that he just wanted you to make sure that since you took his time to give you a hard time and to make sure you send him an autographed picture or gear, or he'll knee you into oblivion. That's from Ben Saunders.
Okay. Tell him I appreciate the time, though.
I will definitely tell him, for sure. So if, you come out and win this, and then obviously you're looking directly at Brock, I just have to ask, man, if James Toney, if the UFC sets him up with an opponent that just happens to be really good for him, he blasts whoever it is and wins, does that become an interesting fight for you at any point? Is there ever a point where a James Toney fight with you becomes interesting?
Well, I mean, I would like to box with him. I think that would be a test of myself, as far as to go out there and fight him in a boxing match. But as far as fighting him in an MMA fight, it's not really intriguing to me, as far as I know the outcome, and I know that, it's not really proving anything to myself. But then there's, the financial aspect. If people really are that interested in watching what a world-class MMA fighter versus a world-class boxer in an MMA fight, if people really are that interested, they're going to tune into it. I guess I would take it. But it's not something I guess I'm pushing for on a personal note. I always kind of want to prove to myself, right now, honestly, I like to fight the wrestlers, the guys that have more of a wrestling base, because that's the area that I feel the least proficient at. I feel really great at submissions. If someone wants to have a submission match with me, I feel fine with that. I really like striking right now, so I feel comfortable there compared to what I do in the wrestling aspect. That's still the area of my game that I feel probably on a personal note is my weakest area. And so I guess as weird as it sounds, I'd want to fight guys that's their strength, so that way I can really test myself there and improve.